All right, time for some NBA talk. The drama between James Harden and the Philadelphia Sixers, well, it has intensified. According to The Athletic, Harden was a no-show at practice on Wednesday and hasn't been present with the team since Sunday. So let's talk about what's going on in the 215 with my guy, the great NBA reporter from TrueHoop. His name is Jarod Hector, and he joins me now. Jarod, how are you doing? Did you show up for work today?
Yes, I showed up for work today. I was not in Houston like James Harden is reportedly. Look, this is what it is. James said he was going to do this. He said he was going to make things uncomfortable. That's what he's doing right now. Daryl Morey known for being okay with things being uncomfortable. Well, we're going to see what kind of temperature he has for that.
Yeah, I want to get into that because, as you said, Harden said that he planned to make things uncomfortable with the Sixers until he was traded. Well, seems like he's doing that now by not showing up to practice. Philly opens their season against the Bucks on October 26th. So I got to ask you this, Jarod. Are these moves by him an attempt to put pressure on the Sixers to trade him before the start of the season?
Without question. Look, James knows Daryl very well, obviously, from their time in Houston. We all know Daryl is a guy who is not going to move until he gets exactly what he wants out of any potential deal. He says we know he has an appetite for discomfort, and that's all well and good. The question is, how much of an appetite does Sixers owner Josh Harris have for discomfort? How much of an appetite does Joel Embiid have for discomfort? How much of an appetite does new head coach Nick Nurse have for discomfort? That's what we have to ask, and this is definitely Harden putting pressure on the Sixers to make this move happen sooner rather than later.
All right, so he wants it to happen sooner rather than later, but I think when you're looking at this, Jarod, you've got to look at the money. So just looking at the money, it would appear that it would make sense for Harden to show up and play. Why? Because he could be subjected to a fine just over $389,000 for every preseason and regular season game that he misses without the consent of the team. Also, could get a fine of $2,500. That's pretty light for him for missing practice. We know Harden wants to be traded, but does his trade value decrease the longer that he stays away from the team?
His trade value doesn't decrease. I think the market is pretty clear for what it is, and I think, the teams that want him are doing what they can to get the necessary pieces to acquire him. As far as the fines and the money goes, yes, significant dollars can be lost, but there are multiple ways to make things difficult, right? He can not show up to practice like he did today. He can show up on game day. He can suit up. We've seen James Harden suit up for a game day and not, shall we say, deliver his best playing ability. We've seen him do that. He could also do kind of an off and on kind of thing. All right, I'm going to show up today, but then he may not show up the next day, and then we don't know. Is James coming to work today? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. There's a lot of ins and outs, but I think James Harden is a known commodity, and whomever is trading for him has talked to his agents, and they know what they're getting into.
All right, so they know what they're getting into, and we'll see how that goes. Speaking of trades, the Clippers, they've been the most prominent team linked to Harden, but there hasn't been a deal yet. Do you think a deal will materialize between the Clips and the Sixers, and do you view LA as a good fit for the Beard?
I do think a deal will happen. Look, the big thing that Daryl Morey is looking to gain is, he keeps talking about players, right, and someone of the same caliber. That's some smoke. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't want that. The big thing Daryl is looking ahead to is, okay, if and when this thing's come tearing down in Philly, which it is with James Harden going at potentially a future Embiid issue down the road, how am I going to rebuild this team's coffers? Daryl needs young talent and draft picks. The Clippers don't have any draft capital right now. They used it all up getting Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in their building. So it's going to have to be a 3-team deal or a 4-team deal where they work out some other way to get some capital from teams, some draft capital. Look at Oklahoma City, look at Houston, teams that have a ton of draft stock available. So that's what I think they'd be doing right now. And as far as basketball on the floor, Harden would be a wonderful fit for them because despite what everyone thinks about him, the guy was still playing at an all-star / all-NBA level last year. He's still an elite offensive player, one of the best playmakers in the league, and he's an elite three-point shooter.
All right, Harden could be a good fit with the Clippers. We will see if that happens. So that brings me to my last question here, because Harden hasn't played in any of the Sixers' 3 preseason games, Jarod, but he has stated that he could make his preseason debut this Friday in Philly. Do you think we will see Harden in the Sixers uniform again, or is it more likely that he's moved before the start of the season?
I mean, I think it's very much possible we see him in a uniform. Now, again, in a uniform and playing to James Harden level capabilities, that's a completely different story. But I think it is very possible we'll see him in a Sixers uniform again. But the likelihood is that this trade happens sooner rather than later, and likely sometime early here in the season.
All right, early in the season, the market for James Harden heating up, I guess, for at this point now with all this going on. Harden not reporting to practice on Wednesday, hasn't been with the team since Sunday, as I said earlier. That is Jarod Hector. He shows up for work. He showed up for work today. He showed up for this interview from TrueHoop. Jarod, appreciate you as always for the insight. Thank you, my man.
Appreciate you, man.